guys, this is Robert again, and thank you again for watching these short series of videos on basic controls of your camera. If you're attending one of our workshops, we hope that you watch this entire series of videos so that there will be a basic understanding of how to control your camera before we ever even get together. Again, if these are things that are old news to you, then you certainly understand the importance of having a grasp on all these basic aspects of how to control your camera. And I appreciate the time that you've taken to learn these aspects. In our first video, we talked about the 3 items that control light so that you can capture an image and make it the way that you choose to make it. The first item we talked about was aperture. Aperture is the series of blades within your lens usually that open and close, and it controls 2 things. It controls how much light comes into your camera. Obviously, the smaller the opening, the less light. The larger the opening, the more light. And it controls depth of field, how much of your image remains in focus in front of and behind what it is that you're focusing on, or your focus plane. The more narrow your opening, the more things that are in focus. And the wider your opening, the fewer things that are in focus. And remembering that to control it, the more narrow opening is your largest f-stop number, for instance f22, and the wider your opening is your smaller f-stop number, for instance f2.8. So that's aperture. And we also talked about in the next video shutter speed. It's a curtain that's basically in front of your film or your digital sensor that opens and closes, that allows to see your film or your digital sensor to see what it is that you're focusing on, that you want in your image. The longer well, we talked about how that also controls 2 things. Light, the longer that curtain is open, the more light it lets in. The shorter time it's open, the less light it lets in. And the second thing it controls is the stop action of what it is that you're photographing or videoing. The longer the opening, the more things that are blurred over time. The shorter time that you leave that curtain open, the more things stop and appear to just stop in midair, just completely stops the action. So it stops the action and it controls the light as well. The third thing that we're going to talk about today is your ISO, or your film speed. Digital's great. Back when we shot film, we had to know ahead of time what we were shooting, the environment we were shooting it in, how much light, where the light was coming from. Those are things we needed to know ahead of time because we had to purchase the correct film for the environment that we would be shooting in. Nowadays with digital, that's no longer an issue. You just select it between photographs and you're good to go. So what is ISO? Again, ISO is your film speed. Your ISO is how sensitive your film or your camera is to the amount of light that it receives. So if you have a low ISO, let's say it's a 100. Typically speaking, cameras go, well, modern digital cameras, we'll say from 100 to 6400. In film days, that was a huge deal. But and then nowadays, some will go lower than that, some go higher than that. So, but we're going to use 100 to 6400. If you choose a low number for your ISO, for instance 100, then it is less sensitive to light. You need more light to pounce through that camera before that low film speed, that low ISO, will have enough data to record. So you need brighter light. The lower the number, let's say 100, you need more light. Outside in the sunshine, just incredibly controlled video lighting, whatever it is, you need more light. If you go to a higher ISO number, let's say 6400 on the extreme, then you need much less light. It's much more sensitive to the light that's coming into your film or your sensor. So that allows you to shoot images or video in much darker situations with much less light. So what's the trade-off? Why wouldn't you just want 6400 all the time? Well, film and digital are, it's different, but it's a similar result. The higher your ISO, the more artifacts or noise or grain that's introduced into your image, because your sensor is changing depending on your ISO. So if you have an ISO of 6400 the amount of noise that will show up into your overall image will be much greater than a low ISO, especially like in the dark areas of your image. You'll see little dots or artifacts or what seems to be grain, especially in film, that will show up in those dark areas, and your details won't be quite as good because of the noise or the grain. If you shoot it at a low ISO, let's say 100, and you have enough light, then most all of your noise is gone. It's clear. Those artifacts and that grain does not appear so much in a low ISO image. So you really have to balance out what look you're, because there may be a time that you want that grainy look, that old photojournalism look that looks like it's printed in a newspaper. You may want that look, and you can achieve that by going to a really high ISO. But if you want clear image, you need to be at the lowest ISO number that you can get to be able to capture the image that you're wanting to capture. So ISO controls your sensor sensitivity. Your digital sensor that captures your images, it controls the sensitivity of that sensor, or if you're using film, it controls how sensitive your film is to receiving light. And the trade-offs is more or less noise. Lower numbers, less noise. Higher numbers, more noise. Hope that helps. We're going to do one more video after this one just to kind of put it all together, and we're going to talk about aperture and shutter speed and ISO and how we put all those together to create a properly exposed image. Thanks for watching.